Whew. Hello, good afternoon, morning. I don't know what time I've been scheduled. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but unfortunately, given the circumstances, this is as good as I can do, and this is as good as I can look. I haven't gone to the barber, so therefore, everything that you see. Anyway, my name is Tupac Martir. I am the creative director and founder of Satore Studio in London. I come from quite a diverse background, so let me share you a little bit of my story. I usually start talks in this way because usually I come on stage, so this usually preludes me.
Oh, beloved devotees of God and seekers after truth, the illumined and enlightened teachers of humanity who have attained the supreme goal, declare in unequivocal terms that behind and beyond this life of sensory perception and mental conception on the surface, there is a deeper and more permanent life, a state of unalloyed bliss, of pure infinite consciousness, where individuality merges into universality, where diversity merges into unity, and where humanity merges into divinity, where is the only one supreme self without a second. That is the goal of human life.
That is indeed the goal of human life. So the way that I always talk about Studio is based on this quote writing by Eduardo Galeano, and I'm very keen about how this all works, because I truly believe that what we do is not just make things pretty. It's not just to make things look in a certain way. The way that we work is we expect every element that we create to be a character within the piece. And by this, I mean the fact that the way that you use a light is not just the light. That light has a character, it has a way of living, the color temperature that it has, the intensity, the angle in which it's coming and touching the actor or the dancer. You know, all of that has a character that allows to elevate the story. And those things might not happen in your conscious, might happen in your subconscious. You know, is the back of your brain is actually working in order to let you deeply understand what we're trying to do. And I always say that for me goes and runs along every single one of the elements of what we do. That runs into the way that we use an engine, the way that we use a camera, the way that we use a media server, the way that we use a mocap system. I mean, if you think about it, all those little elements, although they are very technical, they change the perception that you're going to have of the piece, mainly because of its limitations or the things that it can do and things it can do better or worse than the other kind of thing. And if you're happy to live with those decisions. I always use the beginning of House of Cards as this moment where we've all seen it, and we see Frank come out and grab the dog, and when he looks up, if we were in a cinema, that gaze kind of skimmed through a lot of people because we're so distant from the screen, and then this is 2000s, 10, 11, 12 kind of thing, and but when people were watching this moment, they were watching at home in their TVs. And also the gaze is a little bit closer. But Netflix knew that most people at the time were watching series on either iPads or phones. And so therefore they're really, really close to you. So when he stares back at you, that gaze is straight into your eyes. And then obviously now Fleabag has used it very, very well, and has been very smart in the way that she's broken you in that kind of sense. But that beautiful moment where you realize that they thought about how the technology actually became part of the storytelling. And that's what we like to think about ourselves at Studio. We like to think that everything that we do is part of the story, no matter what is the element that we're using for it. Some of you guys might know who I am. Some of you guys have to know about the studio. Some of you guys are absolutely clueless about who we are. So here's a little video that hopefully helps with that. So this is kind of what we do. So I figured that we would start from the beginning. You know, the original concept of how the studio came together, and what I use as the basis of what we do as a multidisciplinary space in the world. The first project is called Nyeka, and it's something that we debuted in 2012. I had written this story in 2005 after some of the ugliest things that could happen to a human being. And slowly I was looking for ways of transforming it from being a painful moment into something that was actually a lot nicer. So I have a duality. I am Mexican. My parents are Mexicans, even though I'm British. But my dad's indigenous, and my mom comes from a very Catholic side of things. So I live in this really weird ambivalence of my heritage as an indigenous man, and at the same time as a Catholic man. I am baptized, so yeah. But you know, while I was going through it, I had this moment of trying to understand what is my own mortality, and how is that mortality understood on both sides, and how both sides are pulling me in a different way. The reason why you see this image is because I wanted to create a stage that was very, very bare. And all you have to see there is, you know, this is a maquette, and you can see 12 screens. And really, there's 13. Someone has stolen that one, so I don't know why, but you know, I always find it fascinating to put this image, even though we're missing one screen, because I find it funny. But yeah, but the stage was made out of just 13 screens. 9 of them were on kinesis motors. 4 of them were, as you can see, on wheels for them to be moved by the dancers, our shadow men. The shadow man was very important. I wrote it, like I said, in 2005, 2006. And I always believe of the shadow man as the ether, as the matter, as the elements that exist in the world, and they can be good and they can be bad, depending on what is it that the universe is trying to do with you. You can see on the left side the outfits for the children's choir. I'll get to them shortly. But you know, I always wanted to create a piece that, even though, like I said, is because the stage was so bad, it was all created by light, and it was the idea of how the light can actually create spaces and dynamics and create an environment in which the story could be told. A lot of it comes from Vasily Kandinsky and the way that he thought that the yellow sound, you know, the idea that music and that sound, movement, color, and new technologies could actually tell a story without the use of words. And you know, this is what I was looking for and what I was trying to recreate. You'll see a lot of the times there's drawings. I like to storyboard almost everything that I do, especially when it's this big and important. So this is the storyboard of scene 1, and you can see it's very colorful and it's very manic, and the entire first scene is all about projection. Is all about imagery. Is how can I dissect all these images and all these things at the same time, and tell the story of excess and the way that as human beings we love excess at the end of the day. Once again, you know, you have the orchestra, and you have all these different scenes from all over the world. And in reality, the content for this bit was actually done by 7 directors, including myself, from all over the world. And I give them very strict directions about what I wanted them to capture from their world and their life, and send back to me. And then we had a bunch of post-processing to it, so that they could all look sort of in a similar way. But a lot of what I was trying to do here was breaking the imagery into the different sections, into the different screens, and especially to try to see how much I could feed people information. One of the most interesting bits is the first act is about 23 and a half minutes, 24 minutes. Up until minute 16, 17, we used about 50 or 60 images. From that moment until the end, we used over 2,000. because I wanted to saturate people with imagery. I wanted them to go to a point where they went, that's it, I don't want to see anymore. I need something else. And I wanted that because it became at the end of the day, you have an audience. And I wanted the audience at that point to all be together in the same place where they just went, enough, I've had enough. This is part of the second act, and you can see immediately how it's changed completely and how it's a bit more black and white, and it's a bit more about color, and no color, and using whites and variations of white and the shadows and the dresses, and it becomes a lot of a simpler, darker moment, which is basically the worst time for a character. You can see it on the right side. My children's choir does come at some point, and this image of this dress coming out, which I'll show you in a second. And then this is the third act, and you can see how immediately the colors have become more refined, how the lines are more refined, and it was only because the quality of the light that I was going to use was going to be a little bit different. The movement needed to change. Once again, the laws and the rules that I was supplying needed to be shifted, and I wanted to showcase that into my drawings. The reason why I wanted to show it that way is because I knew there was going to be a big team, and so in order to communicate with the rest of the design team, I needed to be very clear about what I was trying to achieve, and how I was going to achieve it, how I could use different things to put it together. It's actually almost at the end of this piece that we end up using a little bit of color. Music is very important. So in this picture, as you can see, the people in the mask are Austin TV, a band that I've been working with since I was 2004, 2005. They're a Mexican band. Nicole, the girl on the cello, she is my arrangist. And then there's Diana, who is a soprano, who I met actually at the Mexican Opera House in 2002 when I started working in this business. So her and I have gone a long way, and it was really lovely to have her as part of the team that's going to deliver this piece. Dance is obviously very important in my life, as you'll find out in the next set of projects. And I wanted to, that year in 2011, I debuted at NDT, and I met a beautiful choreographer called Fernando Magadan, and I invited him to come and choreograph the piece so that he could choreograph the Shadow Man. Costumes are obviously very important, but one thing that was very interesting is I knew from the fact that I wanted to cover the faces of my dancers, which is quite unheard of in other times. But rather than going in and putting a mask in front of them right away, what I did is I ended up taking fencing classes. And so that way they had to learn a brand new set of tools by learning how to fence, while at the same time covering their face. So when I eventually put them back into their normal world, which is dancing, the fact that they had their faces covered didn't exactly create any problems with them. There's a lot of props, including 2 jaguar heads that each one of them has about 50,000 beats. They were created by Charlie Lemindu, who is known for doing Lady Gaga's hair for a long time in tours and things like that. The stage, as we spoke about, has got the 13 screens, with the one missing in the picture. There's a lot of rigging, there's a lot of motors, there's a lot of things to be able to hang. So this was a bit of a crossover between rock and roll, which is part of my life, or music industry, and then my theatrical and art side of things. Projections, as we spoke before, they're very important. The 9 screens that are going up and down, and then obviously the 4 that are in wheels. Lighting, as I said, very, very important. Now you can start seeing the idea of my dress. You can start seeing some of the shadows that are being created. This is us at Black Island Studio when we were about to start production rehearsals with everybody else. You can see how tall the structure starts being and creating. My children's choir, and I always go because everyone always needs a children's choir. It's quite I always find it fascinating to have one, and I think they bring a completely different energy to it and eeriness to moments that I needed it, but they also brought some really amazing moments and songs when they were also needed. You can see the dress coming out, which at the time wasn't as heavy. It was only about, at that point, it was only about 35 kilos, 40 kilos. By the end of it, it weighed over 250 kilos. I'm always been very keen about using old technology, so I have 12 overhead projectors. All of them, I created tools for it and little toys that I can play. In this case, one of them was this maze, so people could actually rotate the maze at the same time. So I kept everybody on time because they were all layer in 6 and they were moving around so that the labyrinth actually moves and shifts together. We could have done it in projection, but I love the idea of having to synchronize 6 different people and the mathematics that went into creating the labyrinths and everything else, so that it just felt like a single projection of all of them moving at the same time. At some point, we were able to be the first show in the world to use tracking. So this is the first show, that's actually the first picture ever taken of casts after black tracks being used. It will go down in history as the first time that black tracks was being seen. Once again, we did a lot of rehearsals, and the guys that threw themselves at it in tremendous ways. We were looking at how we could use all these techniques of storytelling and light to tell a story. Here's our band, the Austin TV, which I always imagined them as being astronauts who had been playing in this world. We had a lot of projections. We had there you go. This is the end of the movement of the 6 people moving the overhead projectors to eventually land on this forest. And it was just the combination of digital and analog has been something that I've always been very keen about. So for example, here the back is actually the projection that you see is an artist with a bowl with crystals and oils and water, spinning it around in order to create this very dynamic movements, very much like in the 1960s that were being used. And then at the front of it, you had the dancer who is been having a secondary light and projected on top of it so that they can seem like they're part of it. And the synchronization of the dancer and the artist, and how the dancer could do something, a movement, and then the artist will react to it and then make it look like like the dancer was actually controlling the projection. It created a very nice dynamics between all of them. Here's our beautiful dress. Like I said, it was 200 plus kilos by the time it ended. It was carried by 3 people. It flew by with some motors, and in the end, this is only part of the cast and crew. Overall, there were 180 people working in this project, and I still claim it's the beginning of what you see today as Satore. So without further ado, here's a little bit of what it looked like. The next project I want to talk to you about is something that's very dear to my heart. So in 2017, I was about to get on a plane to go to Italy when I received a phone call that Mexico had just had an earthquake and that the city was completely destroyed. I can't tell you how hard it was to take that flight to Milan and being very wary about what was happening to one of my favorite cities in the world, but also where a lot of my friends and my family lives. It was very, very hard and very tough. But in true Mexican power, the people in the city rose up, and I was amazed by how incredible the way that people were helping each other. So at the time, I was having to have conversations with Johnny Walker, and they wanted me to do a piece. And then once all this happened, they were shifted a bit of the focus, and they wanted to create a piece about achievements, about things that people were proud of. And they gave us one of the most amazing canvases in the world. And just to give you an idea, they asked me to do a projection map on this, and we decided that we were going to do it. So we ended up making a projection surface of 100 meters by 42 meters, which basically, if you take the first windows at the bottom, that's where we started, and then we finished where it actually starts angling. Quite a big projection. We actually put all our projectors on that little building to the right. Is a little hotel, and so we ended up creating structures there so we could potentially project upon the building. But they wanted it to be about achievements. And so, as always, I kind of went back to the way that I see my life and the way things we do. And since I was a child, I was always amazed by mazes and labyrinths. And so I figured that the best way to tell the story of this character that I wanted to do was to talk about labyrinths. You know, you move, then you find a wall, and you have to start again, and you move around, and then eventually you solve it. And so we created this entire dynamic of our character having to go through the labyrinth, and then eventually morphing little by little as he gets stronger and grows the different skin, so that eventually he comes out on the right side of the problem. But knowing that the following day he's going to start again from scratch. And I always thought of the people of Mexico in that way, in which they were, stuck in this space, and but every day they get up and they keep going and they keep pushing, and I wanted to share that with them. So we created this kind of space for them to tell the story, and also once again so I could start creating and breaking down the different sequences and the different things that we needed to do. So another thing that I wanted to do was I didn't want to be just my canvas. I wanted to share with everybody in the city. And so I started playing around with the idea of what would happen if I could grab Instagram feeds and Twitter feeds and eventually create mosaics or create ways for people to upload their achievements, and then taking that and creating this kind of different mosaics and highlighting 6 of them in 40 by 40 meters so that the entire city would know what their achievement was. So we started playing around with it, dissecting it. One thing that I was saying to my team is I don't want to do any destruction. I don't want anything to collapse. I want things to kind of create and become something different every single time. Because at the end of the day, the city was going through that transformation of what it thought it was and now what it will be. So we kind of created, once again, a little storyboard that showed where I wanted things to happen, where I wanted the integration of all the social media elements, and then where I wanted the other things to be. This is pictures of what it looked like. So you can see the first mosaic to the left of all these Instagram elements, and then they will disappear and then will come back. And when they come back, they will come back to a different type of mosaic with none of the metadata, but just the images. And people were really keen on it. We had about 9 million people submit pictures. Quite a nice campaign. But back to our character, Hiku, who this is our original drawing, and then more drawings. We also started breaking down how we wanted the movement to be, and by breaking down the movement, we understood that if we were going to do all these different scenes, It's how big is our labyrinth? How do we need to shoot it? At this point, we had already been playing for about 9-10 months with mocap, if not more. And I realized that mocap was the way to go with this project, and especially for the tight deadline that we had. So we kind of made a maze of what needed to be and how the distances were going to be, and so we had an idea of what we needed to record. We obviously storyboarded the whole thing in a more detailed way, and that was important because every single one of those scenes eventually got broken down for the different artists to create, because we realized that we were so tight on time that we're going to need a lot of artists around the world to help us develop this and get it achieved. So we had different artists across the entire world working, from Australia, New Zealand, Japan, people in Thailand, people in Nepal. There were people in Romania. There were people in Germany, Sweden, Italy, France, Spain, London, the US. There were people in Mexico City. There were some people in Colombia, and there were some people in Brazil. So, we were basically working around the clock, and we needed to make sure that our curve, which is the first one I'll show you, matched with all the scenes that were here. So we would tell them, this is the bit that you're looking at, and you're looking at this 30, 40 frames, and this is the world that it has to be, and this is how our character needs to look at. While at the same time we were recording the motion capture data and breaking that down and sending that clean and that kind of thing. There's nothing funnier than asking a dancer to fall and just like, can you please fall a little bit more like this and not so much like that? Because obviously you end up getting that data, and that's the data that you end up using for the show. This is one of my favorite collaborators, Sonia, who you'll see a few times in my pieces. We were trying to understand what we need to do, and we did a lot of the work with her because we were short of time, but also our main character, who you'll see shortly, was on another type of deadline. So we were trying to match the movements of one to the other. Like I said, the skin of our character kept on moving depending on the moment of the story. So this is little by little the progressions that we were having. This were done by a very talented French artist. And this is Isaac. This is a dancer. He's Mexican, but he's also the principal dancer at the English National Ballet. And like I said, he arrived, and we were supposed to have him for about 4 hours. We ended up having him for about an hour from the moment he arrived, and getting measured and getting mocapped and the suit and everything else, and teaching the choreography. And it was quite tight. But because we had done so much mocap at that point, we understood very well what we needed to do with his movement. So even though he's rehearsing here, I'm already recording all the data that is coming out of his suit, so that I can then manipulate it later in the process. And that was very, very important. That's why Sonia did a lot of the other movements, and then we stayed with Isaac to do the bits that we really wanted to do. We always show this image because of how badly my hair looked, not any better than this, but also because that's G, who was my assistant for the shoot, and he's trying to explain me how he thinks the movement should be and how he thinks it looks. But in reality, I'm telling him how I really think he looks. Anyway, so a lot of banter. It kind of keeps the place going. And happy. And this is the kind of data that we were getting out of the suit, and it's really pretty. And you can see in the background some of the wireframe elements that we're starting to add to the scene, and also how I started breaking down the movement from Isaac so that I could create different things. And so here, I slow down the movement and then make sure that that he's out, and then I cut into the other side. Really interesting data out of camera and bath. But no. Not all data is exactly the same. Sometimes you get some really weird data that you would really this is the project. This is the final piece already projected. It was amazing. We slept very little. We basically did the piece. We recorded all the data on the 30th of October, and we were live on the 2nd of December. So to create all those worlds, and to create all the cameras, and to create all the animations and all the lighting and all the editing and all that, I think we finished 2 hours before we went live. We were finishing the last moments of the piece. So without further ado, here's a little bit of what it looked like. So yeah, so that was it. We had a lot of people watching this thing, and it was quite demanding. But we're really happy with the overall output of it. If you want to see, there's a documentary that Vice did. That's on our Vimeo channel, and if you ever want to see the piece, there's also on our Vimeo channel. It actually looks really nice in phone because of the aspect ratio. So yeah, there you go. So next project I want to talk to you about. We've been designing Encore now for about 5-6 years, and when this happened, we had already been working with them and Punch Drunk on some ideas about using audio and a space in order to tell a story. And so when this installation came through, they called me and they said if I was willing to come in and do a piece, to which I, seeing the people that are working on it, I was like, yes, of course. So I knew I wanted to create a dance piece, and I knew I wanted to create a hologram. How I was going to do that, I wasn't sure, but I knew that I needed to start somewhere. And the way to start was I wanted to record my dancer, and so I came up with ideas of what it should look like for her and what the particle system should be of that look. And then we had a second one, and then finally our third look. And when we came to it, we knew that we wanted to do a combination of point cloud and recordings. We weren't sure yet what kind of music we were going to get because at the time they were starting to break down how the music was going to work. We wanted to know if we were going to get bass lines or guitars or drums or whatever it was, but also we didn't know which songs we were going to get. So it was a bit like record as much as you can because you don't know what you need to do afterwards with it and how you're going to have to edit it. So here you can see Sonia again, who is with one of the makeups and in a very nice outfit. We wanted her to look amazing because we wanted that imagery to be super cool. So what we did is we ended up recording ins and outs and movements and different things so that we could potentially go back and cut to what we needed. And so we spent a lot of time trying to understand how we're going to record this, and the best decision was we're going to have a Connect, we were going to have a camera, an A7, and we're going to have a Red phone. From there, we started taking the data and analyzing it and processing it and playing around with what we needed to create, which was a blast. So this is kind of the looks that we finished with in terms of what the point cloud looked like. Then this is look number 2, and this is look number 3. And one thing that's very apparent is that because of the way that we recorded this, we were able to maintain and see, not just the skeleton, but also the outfits. And that's the reason why we went with this technique, because I wanted to make sure that the outfits were there. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just mocap that we were using to create these characters, but rather this element of what is real, what is not real, what's human, what is digital, and where it lives in between each one of them. and then at the same time start creating kind of my own choreography out of it. We got finally the music, and we looked at elements, and we decided where we wanted to put things and where we didn't want to put things, because of how everything was going to work. And then from there, started picking moments based on the recordings that we had and putting them together, and eventually creating the 30-minute piece that it became. How we're going to present it, we decided to partner with Hypervision, so we had all these fans, and then getting all the fans to have the same image, and then creating this little mosaic of images. But I was always scared that someone was going to stick their hand out and cut down sense. So we wanted to put a protection. So what I decided to do is that I wanted a mirror to live in front of it, so it will be a two-face. So this is how it looked when we were testing, and this is how it looked like when we were on site. Shooting with fans is impossible sometimes, and to get a really nice frame rate to match it with it, but it looks fantastic. So we decided to put a mirror, a two-sided mirror, so you will sit down and you will stare at it, and there will be a light, and then so you can see a reflection of yourself, and then the light will go off, and you will see this imagery kind of show up from the mirror, which was really, really ghostly and haunting, and it just created this really beautiful thing where people just could come in and try to activate it in some sort of way. It would appear, and it was just it was really nice and ephemeral, which is what we wanted to make it. I always laugh at this because I got this picture sent, and I was like, I wasn't expecting Danny to be there, but because we had a camera rolling all the time to see the reactions of people, and so I sent him a message going, "You look very pretty." So he had a good old laugh with this. So here's a little bit of how actually looked, and a little bit behind the scenes. If you ever want to see the full piece, we ended up making this as Uncle's video for Film More But Less. It's also in our video. Last thing I want to talk to you about is this piece, Cosmos Within Us, which we would have loved to bring to BIFAN, and unfortunately we were unable to. But hopefully next year. So I won't tell you too much about it because I hope that you're going to be able to see it in the flesh. But for the time being, so Cosmos comes with this idea. Once again, you can always see drawings. I wanted to understand how I could bring a different type of style to virtual reality, and not only in that sense, but I wanted to explore what was possible when I started combining these worlds. Everyone talks about cinematic, and I wasn't really looking for cinematic. I was looking for performative. I was looking for the way that I can understand all these different mediums, and how can I understand many years of understanding from cinema and theater and opera and ballet, and how could I combine all these elements together to become one single thing within VR. There's a lot of 16:9 and 4:3 footage, and we wanted to know how we could play with it and make it interesting for the viewer to to experience, but we also wanted to figure out ways in which we could actually do a play within it and see how that could be understood within the space and actually create something physical that was also part of the story. So, so after many iterations of what we're trying to do, we ended up, putting together this thing that it's not VR, it's what we call performative art, because it's in a performance that happens in different realities. So, we did in 2017, we did this test, this proof of concept at VR Days. And you can see there are a bunch of screens and a dancer and live musicians and actors and, all these little elements that I wanted to bring into the piece, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. And from there, once we had it, it was quite interesting because then it became 2.5 years worth of experimentation about what we could do. And throughout that process, we created this timeline and this curve of what things lived and how the different scenes lived within the story. And anything, we ended up running a line, and anything that lived above the line was real. Anything that was underneath the line was surreal. And the further you went down, the surreality would go bigger, and the further you went up, the reality would get bigger. We wanted to understand that what were the laws and the rules that you couldn't break from one side to the other, and that went for everything that we're going to do. So, just to make you understand how Cosmos works, Cosmos has first of all is directed live by me. It has a voiceover artist who is live. It's got musicians that are live. It has a sound engineer that is live. All visuals are triggered in real time. We have a sound designer who is making sure that our entire immersive sound is working, and that's because we have an 11.2 surround sound system that performs as the environmental layer. We also have, depending on the show, a camera director and a lighting designer. Added to that, we're called, this side of the world is we're the Son et Lumière. And then in the performance area, you have 2 shadow men, 2 dancers who are in charge of taste, smell, and touch. So all the haptics that happen to our interactor are in charge of them. Our interactor is the person that is on the headset. Then you have an audience that is actually watching how the piece is being performed, and they can see whatever the interactor is seeing in the headset, they're seeing it as projected. As you can see here, our interactors are giving him a cookie and also a juice box, but also working with the smells. Olfactories are really important for us. It became quite a massive way of bringing people into the space and how they understood each one of the scenes, and how your brain, because it locates memory really, really quickly with smell, how it would react to it. So there's nothing funnier, by the way, than someone seeing a juice box in the headset and then sticking their hand out and actually holding a juice box and then bringing it in and drinking it. It's the smiles that it brings to people's faces. It's amazing, But the show grew. The show grew from in terms of from when we presented in Venice, there were 4 people in the audience. When we took it to Raindance, there were 10 people in the audience. By the time we made it to the iFilm to the iFilm Museum in Amsterdam, there were 115 people in the audience. And by the time we made it to New York, we had 150 people. So it becomes this beautiful thing in which our interactor, in a way, is sort of our cameraman, sort of our director. But I'm in charge of making sure that the energy and the story never gets lost. But we experience everything through their interactor and how they're living and what they're exploring and what they can see. Here's our interactor in the forest, feeling the wind and the smell. And, you can see me there. You can see the musicians. It's all these beautiful environments that the audience can see and how it becomes real. Now, you have to understand that our interactor has open headphones. But also all the audience has it. So everybody gets the voice directly to the ears. So it creates a proximity that is very difficult to explain to people until they are there, because obviously you don't have music just blasting on the 2 speakers. but you have an entire sensorial element of how sound moves around you, which is really important. In order to create a lot of these things, we had to go into photogrammetry, we had to go into motion capture, facial capture. On the right we have Riz, who's one of our actors. On the left we have Patty, who's our grandmother, who's the one that gives you the juice box. The weird combination of having the interactor and the photogrammetry and the mocap, and then our shadow man. It's a bit of a complicated rehearsal thing that we have to do there. I showed you earlier that we created this the set, and basically this is a scene that I could say is my love letter to Almodovar, with the film within a film, the idea of surrealism, from Terry Gilliam and Peter Greenwood, and then finally the Wes Anderson type of way of moving the camera and how you are looking around the entire place. We had 13 actors, various types of green screens, various elements that were happening. You can divagate and look at all around. Behind you is an entire theater being made with a bunch of motion capture audience. It's really interesting. Right there, we're using a little fake baby. In reality, the three babies that appear are a leg of ham, a chicken, and a 15-pound bologna, for a 4-year-old to remember how his sister looked like as a piece of meat. There's a lot of workflows that came through it because of the way that we wanted to do some things. So, we ended up finding different workflows from Houdini into Unreal Engine, about how we wanted to create certain pedals, how things needed to behave. Poor Liam spent about 2.5 months trying to make sure that flower looked exactly the way that I wanted it to look like, and that it behaved the way that I wanted it to look like. Here's an image of Steyr in our film in Amsterdam, performing to 150 people. And it was us coming in to make cinema, and then adapting ourselves to be part of the cinema for the audience. In a more natural way, we usually go into spaces like this, and you can see on my right is a voiceover actor who I direct live, and I pause him and I advance him and I hold him and I bring him up, and the whole time is an experience for all of us. It's like being a conductor, a director, and a gamer at the same time for me, which is a lot of fun. And a lot of things went into this show, like the Dome of Memories, where you see all these screens. The interesting bit about it is we followed 2 pairs of kids, 8 and 4, 12 and 8, for 18 months, and created memories with them and recorded those memories as their brother and sister, and then eventually used those as part of the experience. So there's a whole world of things that go into this show, which is what makes it amazing. To think of all the crew that needs to come in order to shoot this quite adventurous element, and this is just the shooting side of things. This is one scene out of 15, with all the other elements that come from CGI and Unreal and photogrammetry and volumetric and motion capture, and basically every technique you can ever think about is in this piece. I'm not sure if many of you have seen it, but here's a little bit of what Cosmos looks like.
Memory is a wheel.
indeed, we should be in sitting near you. Unfortunately, it is the times that it is, and hopefully next year we will be able to come to BIFAN and be with you and showcase what Cosmos is all about, and you'll be able to experience it. As always, we are here. We know it's dark times out there, and we know it's difficult, but we want to be a light for everybody else to know that we're here. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good day. Enjoy the festival.